Now we need to move the ball so that it shows up on the side of the player whose turn it is. So if player 1 is starting, the ball should be on the left. If player 2 is starting, the ball should be on the right. So save, Pong. Hey, for once it doesn't have a 0. 10. Best place to do this is when we reset for the next round. So open, reset. This ball X is 118. That's in the middle of the screen. Which this should actually have been 120 minus half of the ball size. It doesn't matter. So we need to check which paddle is active. If active player is 1, then we put the paddle somewhere else. We don't need to check whether it's paddle 2 that's active, because there is only one other paddle. Okay, but now what do we put in here? So we want it to be slightly in front of the paddle, right? So we know where the paddle is. Paddles.p1.x. But we also need to compensate for the width of the paddle, because our X position is our left edge. I think our paddles are 4 wide. We hard-coded that, right? And then what offset? 2 pixels? That looks decent. I mean, it would be nice if the paddle was behind it. But we'll be moving the paddles in a minute, so that's fine. Okay, and then for paddle 2, we go paddles.p2.x, which is its left edge, minus, because we're going left, the width of the ball, because of the ball we're also checking its left edge, minus 2. For that to show up, I would need player 2 to... I'm terrible at this. I'm used to the old buttons. We need player 2 to score. I'm trying to get out of the way. Okay. Cool. Next up, the paddles need to be able to move, and then we can move the ball along. So you can essentially aim where you want to start, like a tennis player that can choose where within their particular quadrant they start. So the only reason that we didn't have the paddles moving during the start is because we're not checking for the boundaries. So, but I mean, if I move this to inputs, then I can safely call it, and it'll check the boundaries, and then updates game will only be in charge of ball physics. So it moves the ball, checks the edges for the ball, checks the ball hitting the paddles, and then checks if the ball is off screen. Okay, so then in inputs game, where the hell is inputs game? Inputs game, the paddles can move up and down, and then the paddles check whether they go off screen. Okay, so in TIC, which is our flow control, our game state, wait for start, input start, otherwise. So if we're not starting, then we check inputs and updates. But we can now check inputs in both of these cases, which means instead of putting it in both conditionals, we can just stick it up top, because it is the first thing that has to run anyway. Oops, control S. So inputs for game, which allows the paddle to move. Then if we are waiting for start, we wait for the OK button. Otherwise, we run the game. Either way, we're drawing the game so that everything shows in the background, the borders and the net and the stuff. And if we are still waiting for start, then over the game that is theoretically not running, we draw the start information and ready player 1 and whatever. Okay, here goes. Run. And now if I press up and down, the paddle moves and it doesn't leave the screen. For player 2, same deal. So now at least you can faff with your buttons a little bit and figure out what you need to press before you actually start the game. Okay. Now we need to move the ball so that it lines up with the paddle while it's moving. But this only has to happen during start. So we need a ball update thing. It's time to add inputs start. Update start. I'm reading the line above the one I'm typing. Input start, input game. So update start, update game. What do we check here? This will only be running during the start screen, so we can directly manipulate the Y position of the ball. But the ball needs to line up to the active player's paddle, because otherwise player 2 can move the ball for player 1. So if active player, this seems familiar, is equal to 1, then I'll send end. Ball.y should be paddle 1, Y position, but it needs to be the center of the paddle, so we need to take paddle height. I love that I just remember the names of the global functions. That's because good naming conventions. But then we also need to center the ball, so we also have to we also have to deduct half of the ball size. The brackets aren't strictly necessary because order of operations will handle the divides before it handles the plus and minus, but this is easier to read. Err on the side of verbosity rather than terseness, as my boss used to say. And then this will be exactly the same but for paddle 2. And get my tabbing sorted. It is going out of the side of the screen a little bit here, which is not great, but we can save some space. Though this does make it a little difficult to read. It's not that bad. Now at least everything fits. Okay, run. Good news. The ball is sticking in front of the panel. And then if I move the... Don't you love it when things just work first try? Okay, start the game. Now we need player 2 to score so that we can check the other side. So get out of the way. And now it's on the other side. Much excite. Look at that. Okay. Here's the problem though. Whatever direction the ball was moving in when we scored is the same direction it's going to be moving. So we need the player to know. It doesn't help if you can position the ball at the top of the screen or the bottom of the screen or whatever, if you don't know whether it'll be going up or down when you launch. So we need to show some kind of indication that... How do we do this? We can draw a little arrow, like in code, but that's going to be a lot of lines of code to do something very simple. Do we just make a sprite? Yeah, I think we just make a sprite. Okay, hey, first sprite thing. F2, or click that little button. So this is the sprite sheet. You might have 2 characters in here, which is the default card. If you haven't faffed around with this at all up until this point, you will still have the default TIC cartridge with a little TIC character sitting here. I tried something in a deleted episode, in a deleted video, that I wasn't fond of, so there's still this checkerboard thing sitting here. Okay. Even though the TIC character is sitting here, this is actually the tiles tab, because you have a tile map which allows you to draw a map to screen. See, there's my tester tile. This one over here is sprites. Essentially, it's all one big sprite sheet. It just cuts it in half over here, and the top half is used for map data, and the bottom half is used for sprites. So, just to stick to the convention that this thing is trying to maintain, we're drawing a sprite, so we go to sprites. Traditionally, your first sprite is always left empty, so that if you need to draw something empty, you have that as an option. So let's put it over here. Put a little arrow that points up and to the right. Is that too small? Maybe make it a bit bigger. Okay, so the ball will be this. The little. We're in pencil mode, right? So clicking anywhere uses the color that you have selected down here. Okay, eyedropper tool picks up whatever color you're on. Select tool delete, and does backspace work too? I've never checked. No. Delete stuff. You can also copy and paste when you use the group select thing. This is full, so pick a random color, click on a thing, and it fills the whole thing with that color. This mirrors horizontally, this mirrors or flips vertically, and this rotates. Okay, and that deletes this particular sprite that you have selected. If you want to design bigger sprites, there's a zoomy slider over here that gives you a larger area to work with, but then your pencil becomes really small. So to combat that, over here you have your brush size. So that's 1 pixel, that's 2 pixels, that's 3 pixels, and that's 4, which is coincidentally also the size of our ball. So to indicate what this is going to look like, here's what I'm thinking. If that's our ball, that'll be the indicator saying ball's going up and to the right. That kind of looks like the menu button on an Xbox controller, doesn't it? The series controller that doesn't say start and select anymore, that has the little window button, alt tab button where the select button used to be. It kind of looks like that, but I think it's the wrong way around. Okay, so that's what we're looking for. Little indicator, and then if the ball is going, this is if the ball will travel up when we launch, then this will be to indicate that it's going down, because the same way that I just flipped the sprite here in the sprite editor, you can also flip the sprite in code. And then if it's player 2, obviously the ball will be traveling the other way. So we flip horizontally, that's if the ball's going up, flip vertically, that's if the ball's going down. Okay, now we don't actually want this here. Right-clicking, see there's a color that has a dotted line around it, that's my background color. So if you right-click instead of left-clicking, which see, it fills that color. Okay, so now we just have the sprite. Also worth mentioning, this is black. So when we print this, we need to remember that black is our transparency color. Okay. We only want the little arrow to draw during the start so that you can see where it's going to launch, but we don't want it to show when we're actually playing. So it should be in draw start. We already have a check for which player is active, and then we print center player 1. So we might as well, it's going to be a little convoluted because we're printing the score and everything down here, but we might as well print the little arrow indicator here. So SPR to print a sprite. Number of the sprite, I didn't check that. 272. Sprite 272. We're drawing it over the ball, so ball.x and ball.y. I realize this is wrong, and then transparency color is 0. If I did my job, there should be a little thing on the right here showing what the values are that you pass to the sprite function. Okay, so that should now, for player 1 at least, print the little arrow next to the ball. No. Why not? Sprite 272. Oh, it's top left. It needs to be this side. It was printing it right over the ball, and we couldn't see it. Just for dev purposes, let's make it red. Replicate what I had before. See, it is drawing the little arrow, but it's drawing it in the top left corner, and we needed to draw over there. So, firstly, we need to put it back where it was before. We need it to be white. And then at the moment the ball is... Where's my brush? Here we go. At the moment the ball is sitting here, like that. So that's what we'll be drawing. But we need to offset the ball. Let me just undo that. We need to offset the little arrow 2 pixels this way and 2 pixels this way, so that the ball draws there. So -2, -2. X -2, Y -2. And save and run. Ha! Look at that. Should we make it a bit bigger? Should we give it slightly more tail? Like, now it really looks like the Windows icon. Let's keep it small. Maybe Nah. So few pixels to work with. That's fine. Okay. Now for player 2, we do the same thing. Oh wait, we also need to flip it. Because... Oh, I mean, this is correct. The ball will be going up when it launches. But if I scored with the ball going down, how can I make that happen? Get you out of the way. Okay, that didn't work. I need the ball to be traveling down when I score. There we go. Okay. It's showing up, but the ball will be going down when I launch because the last direction it was going was down, and we don't always want to launch the ball going up. So we actually need to flip the arrow. We need to flip the arrow if... I'm braining so hard. If the y value, if the dy, if the direction that the ball is traveling in the y-axis is negative, it's going up. If it's positive, it's going down. Okay. And we need to do this because the ball direction is irrelevant of which player is active. So let's make a local, call it arrow flip, I guess. Set it to 0. So if the ball is going down, then we need to flip it vertically, which is adding 2. Because 2 is to flip vertically, and then when we draw the sprite, we need to pass it, or we're going to have to pass it scale, because otherwise we can't get to the flip value. And same for this one. Okay. So if the ball is... Okay, so that's fine. Just get this panel out of the way. And then launch from here so that I get a nice 1 bounce. Okay, so now the ball will be going down and it's pointing down. Cool. Now for player 2, because at the moment, let's just get player 2 to score. I realize now I can, because I can move the paddles, I can set up almost like an optimal launch. I need this player to score. See, now the arrow is pointing away from the direction of the thing. So if the ball is traveling left, so if we're in this second part, then we need to... The nice thing about how the flip variable, this flip number works, is that whatever number you're on, increasing by 1 flips horizontally, increasing by 2 flips vertically. So if it's not flipped and you increase by 1, it flips horizontally to whatever the original sprite was. If it's already on 2, which at the moment it is, then adding 1 switches it to both, which maintains the vertical flip but adds a horizontal flip. So +1. That seems almost too easy. No, mouse is in the way. It works! Okay, but now I need to see if it was going down. Whether it indicates when it's going down. It even works. Okay. Now the last thing I wanted to tackle was to make the ball go in the direction that the paddle was moving. So you can essentially, if you move your paddle up, then you can launch the ball up. If you move the paddle down, you can launch the ball down. Okay, to do that, we need to know which way the paddle is moving. Because at the moment, excuse me for the yawn, at the moment, all we know is the new position of the pedal. Where the hell is... it's in inputs now. Inputs game. So, we just update the current state of the pedal to its new position. We don't keep track of how much it's moving which way. There's no trajectory. We need the pedal to remember which way it was moving. So, I think each pedal needs to remember its last move. Control home. So each pedal, speed, previous collide, and last move is equal to 0, so it didn't move. Last move is equal to 0. When we check the inputs, not inputs, inputs game. Okay, when we move the pedal, also set pedal dot last move to, this is, I'm deducting here, so -1. And in that case we're adding, so 1 plus 1. Okay, so now each pedal maintains which way it's moving. Do we want to? No, okay. We shouldn't be manipulating the ball's direction while the game is going, so this should only happen during start. And it's a paddle relay, even though we're manipulating the ball, it's a paddle related movement. So in input start, no, it would be an updates start. Update start, ball.y is equal to, okay, that positions the ball, and then ball.dy. So the delta y then needs to be set to the last direction that the paddle had moved. Copy this. Actually, do I need this to be inside? Oh yes, because we need to check it for player 2, for paddle 2 here. That is so cool. Look, now I can aim it down or aim it up, depending on... So I can mess with the other player before the round even starts, and then when I'm ready... Or, I'm just resetting because it's faster, do this. Or I can even do this. Cool. Cool, I'm happy with that. That was way faster than I thought. That only took like 3 or 4 minutes to do. Okay. I think next up we need to show players what their controls are on the start screen. Which involves, well, seeing that we've gotten a hang of drawing sprites, we can actually draw, instead of just writing out the text, press the left button, because the word left takes up a lot of space on the screen and it looks amateurish. We're going to have to pixel art ourselves a D-pad and face buttons, and then maybe proper arrows and a launch kind of icon. Okay, let me see what I can come up with.